Lord, we thank you for this day where we get to go deeper with you, deeper into understanding who you are. Lord, by that anointing that you've given to us, I pray now that anointing be released, Amen. The spirit of understanding to come to each heart, that our eyes would be open to know you, to understand you, and that your spiritual wisdom would be poured into us this day, whereby we could be set free from the power of darkness and brought and transferred by you into the kingdom of the Son of your love. This we pray, Jesus, in your name. Amen. So last night we did an introduction and then part 1 of 7 small parts talking about the 7 elementals, which we're now using the term mindset. Even though it says spirits in there, the word mindset helps to understand what kind of spirit it is. Spirit's not a wrong word, but it's not a demonic spirit necessarily. All of the evil was originally started by that, by Satan and his minions. But as we move along, we realize that those attitudes start to become part of us. Last night I talked about how some of those twisted thinkings are taught to our next generation as parents. We don't even know we're doing it. And then they're trapped in it, and then they teach it, and it can perpetuates until a champion comes along who comes into awareness and breaks that cycle and brings in now a whole generation of people into a whole different thing. The cool thing in the Exodus 20 verse, the sins of the fathers visited on the 3rd and 4th generation is nullified by the next section. It says, but to the righteous, 1,000 generations. So when you become that righteous person that breaks that, you're actually doing far more than you think. It's not just about you and your grandpa. It's now about many generations on, and you don't even remember where some of the good things that are in your life came from. So even though I might have broken some things, I also have some inheritance that came down from those before me. And I could even specify what some of those are because I've talked to my grandfather and those around him. It's very fascinating. So today we're going to shift gears now to page 2, or the second of those things, which is the victim spirit. And this one, I think, is going to be one of the most common in the body of Christ. The problem with the victim spirit, from your notes here, and if you're watching it on the video, we really need to download those notes and get those so that you can follow along. Problem of the victim spirit. In the little orange box off to the right there, it says a victim spirit is an attitude where you feel you're always being wrongly persecuted or overly judged for your small errors. Some of the symptoms is this kind of thinking. I never seem to get a fair opportunity. I try, but others always get the promotions. My family makes fun of me. My teachers don't like me. My boss is always angry with me. Everyone is against me. And there's this, you could go on and on with examples like that, but it's always someone who feels like everything that's going on is about them and about how they're being mistreated, misjudged, not appreciated. My rights are being violated. And you can tell, it's almost a habit. Well, it is a habit. You can get into just thinking that everything is like, this person cut me off. Why is it this is always happens to me? And it's probably a surprise to most of them that most of the world is not thinking about you. And they didn't do it on purpose. You were just in their way. Or they just found someone they wanted better to do the job that you thought you deserved. And there's some solutions for this. What do I do to overcome this? And the supply from up here on the Isaiah 11:2 is wisdom. There's some things you need to know. Now, before I get going on this, let me start with just this verse. Number 1, wisdom possess your soul. So here's what we're trying to do. We're talking about the area of psychology in this section. where we're saying you need to learn your soul and how to possess your soul. And wisdom is given. Now this verse in Luke 21:14 talks about this, taking personal authority over your mind and your emotions. Therefore, settle in your hearts not to meditate beforehand on what you will answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom which all your adversaries will not be able to contradict or resist. This is a powerful promise from Jesus. This is from Jesus to you. So settle in your hearts not to meditate beforehand on what you'll answer. So if you're one of those that worried about going into a meeting or a confrontation and you're going, I don't know what to say. I think I'll say this. And then after the meeting you go, I think I said it wrong. I wish I'd have said this. You're not listening to Jesus here. He says, don't. I've already taught you things. It's already in you. It's written on your heart. I will bring it up. For he says, I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries will not be able to contradict or resist. You, verse 16, will be betrayed even by parents and brothers. Now he's talking about brothers, he's talking about family, but also in the church. Jesus is promising you that your spiritual parents and your spiritual brothers will betray you. Promising you that. Just get over it right now. It's in that sense of this is going to happen. So then how it affects you is totally up to you, and that's what we're going to teach in the next moments. You will be betrayed by parents and brothers, relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death, and you will be hated by all for your name's sake. But not a hair of your head shall be lost. By your patience possess your souls. The English Standard Version says, by endurance you will save your life. And it's the concept of a characteristic of endurance of a man not swayed from his purpose by trials. So one of the things Jesus wants you to know is, yes, hard times are coming, trials will come, they are going to come. What you do with it is 100% your choice. And if you allow yourself to be victimized by being the victim, by being the minority, being the one that's been unfairly treated, you will be miserable all your life. And you won't be able to possess your soul. Other people possess it. And that's miserable. We're talking about trying to get you free. So how do we get you free? So this is my story, and it comes into this little box down here that I'll explain. I'm going to draw it on the board, but you have it in your notes. I taught Bible college for many years, and one of the lessons I remember teaching so clearly was from a survey that was done regarding the pastoral ministry, and that the average pastor lasts 7 years, and then there was this whole list of miseries that he would go through of being criticized and working too hard and being underappreciated and made responsible for things that they couldn't possibly control. And it was like, I'm reading this whole list and I'm going, dude, did I pick the wrong career or what? It was one of those kind of deals. And I remember reading it out to the class and just, this is warning, if you're going to do this, you're going to lay down your life for Jesus. And started to believe it, that this was the thankless job of the universe, and trying to get people to understand how hard it really was. And you should be feeling sorry for me, you should be taking better care of me, you should be nicer to me. And you can already tell, I don't want to be around that guy at all. And so then as time did go on, and I did have that sense of perseverance, I persevered through it all, but I was still a victim for me. Ministry, so you've never seen ministry until you go to the middle of the city that is unregenerate, that is this, and then I'm in the middle, and I'm still here after 15 years. Now you should really feel sorry for me. I could have been rich and famous and had a big house on the lake or something. So you think all these thoughts, and you realize, I realized, I think I'm trapped in a wrong mindset. So even though by that point I had already gained recognition nationally, and I'm at these international coalition of apostles, and I'm in this group meeting in places all over the nation. And along the way, I met this woman named Tommy Femright, who was a female apostle, fantastic prayer warrior, understands the religious spirit, written a good book on it. It's a bunch of stuff like that. And her and I just started talking, and we really appreciated her ministry. And so my wife invited her to come be at a women's retreat. And she came and spoke at the women's retreat and stayed a couple days in our home. And as we're going along, I can remember the moment. I says, you know, you're an intercessor, Tommy. Why don't you, she's got another name, Barbara, but everybody calls her Tommy. I'm not sure where all that comes from, but you can look her up. She's got good stuff out there on the internet. But I says, Tommy, this is what's going on in Seattle. And I started to talk, and she goes, could I just explain a little teaching to you? You got a little piece of paper, and she grabs a piece of paper. My wife and I are sitting in our little chairs by our window, and she comes up and gets on her knees, sits between us, and starts drawing this triangle that I'm going to explain to you that's on your paper. And she says, I don't know how to say this because I respect you highly in your office and the things that you do. She says, but you've got a victim spirit. And I'm here to help you. And she says, and that's the main reason I came. It doesn't appear to be the other issues that the meetings that we've done. God always uses church meetings to get to us. But it's not really about the meeting. It's just, let's call a gathering, and then all of a sudden God starts to do stuff in it. He incarnates our stuff. So he began to speak. She began to speak to me, and this thing just like, whoa, I think you're right. And for the next 2 days while she was with us, I remember walking out at Richmond Beach, and we were taking a walk and showing her the city and just talking about God. And I would start to complain again. And she's a little gal like my wife, and my wife's standing right there. She comes up and puts her fingers on my lips. Stop it. And she had that personality where you're going, yes, General. Anything you say, I did it again, didn't I? Yep, you did. But she did that. She says, I hope you don't mind, but I'm trying to show you every time you do this. It's a habit for you. And what had happened during that season of time, I even wrote it down. I'm real good about writing lists. And there was 19 major things, people dying, stuff happening, just stuff, that was all, everything that was bad around me right then was happening personally to me in my mind. Until God says, it's not happening to you. You're supposed to be the strong man here, helping others walk through these times. So when she explained this, I realized something that changed me. It took a little while. She kind of assigned my wife as assistant general to put her fingers on my mouth to help me break that habit. And it worked. And I remember God saying so clearly the next morning, I go, Lord, this is fascinating. And he said to me, and I wrote, the days of mourning are over. Stop it. Which is him talking to me in my language, like, okay, done mourning. Take off the sackcloth and ashes, take off the black, and start moving with joy. You're still alive. You're still in charge. You're still in the position I've asked you to fill. You haven't run. And I started to see the other side. And that's when I came out from the bottom and started moving back. And this was all about my emotions, not about performance. Does that make sense? Yes. You can kind of buckle down when you're a tough old warrior and do what you need to do, but you hate your life. But other people may not see it. Some of them closest to you obviously see it. That's why they're not so close as they should be, but they would like to be close, but you're making it difficult for them. So here's the triangle. This 100% from Tommy. And I've asked her many times, can I share this around? And she goes, yeah, it's from God. Just take it. She didn't even care if she gets credit. But I believe it's important to let people know that God is speaking. So I'm going to draw this real quick. She drew this triangle, like you see here. And she put on this point the starting point, which is the victim. And she says, in this evil scenario, the victim always is looking for a persecutor. She might have even said the word predator, but somewhere along the line it felt too strong. But persecutor, the person who's doing this dirty nasty to you. Maybe in my sense it was God because he called me to do an impossible job in my thinking, because I didn't realize it's actually a huge gift and it could be a whole lot of fun. But you got to possess your soul. And then what happens with this position, this starting position, this power position of being the victim? It's actually a controlling spirit in a sense where they want to control everything around them. So if you can become the victim and whine loud enough and find some rescuers, this is the person over here. Oops. Rescue. Why is that word so hard to write sideways? Rescuers. So what a victim usually does is feel sorry for themselves and then find somebody else to agree. It's called a rescuer. And it's not that hard. You don't have to go too far. You can find a few mercies and a couple of teachers and others that have a quick propensity to sympathize in a righteous way, but it actually is harming you. So you build this codependent relationship. And if you can get somebody else to agree that that persecutor really is as rotten as you say, and really as dangerous as you say, then you start to build a case. And if you can get enough enough rescuers, you can build a really strong base against someone. And this was what was happening to a lot of pastoral friends that I had been coaching, is they were getting run out of their own church. But it was by just 2 or 3 people who created a 5 or 6 person or a 10 person, but it felt like an army. And they would become the victim and start to say, my church hates me. And I go, well, that can't possibly be. How many people are in your church? We talk about it. How many people do you think are against you? Well, I got 150 people in the church and I think 3 people hate me. And I go, so that makes 147 that are at least tolerating you. And it's really not about you. God just called you to come do a job. He didn't say you have to be loved, and if you're not loved, you can move on. Where do you get those ideas? That's victim in itself. And so I said, you're a victim over here trying to get me to be your rescuer. And if you don't change your attitude, I'm going to move from rescuer to persecutor. I'm the bad guy now telling you to knock it off. I could have easily said to Tommy, who do you think you are? Coming into my city, telling me I got a problem. Right? Now I put her up to persecutor and just perpetuate the triangle all over. She would have moved on and that would have been the end. But I heard the voice of God in that and I'm going, you're right. Thank you. I don't necessarily submit to you. I submit to the Christ that's in you. But in that I'm submitting to you because you're speaking for Christ, and thank you. I've written her a couple times. You don't realize how that little piece helped turn me and save us and our church and all those who come after us who never even knew that there was that critical moment. Not so much that I wanted to run, but I didn't want to work anymore, which means you do the bare minimum to get what needs to happen to keep the machine running. But the whole time it's running downhill and wearing out, and you can't keep going like that for a long time. So what happens here in this point of bondage of being in the victim is you get over here, you get this person who's in survival mode and says, yeah, it really is. Times are tough. It's tough out there. I mean, how many times raising teenagers have we heard, my wife and I have heard, just you wait till they get to be 18 years old. And I'm going, oh, thanks a lot for your advice. I appreciate that, Is there no hope? Is my kid going to have to go through the nonsense your kid did just because you've experienced it? Or is it possible that we could maybe hope for better for the next generation that comes after us and be true fathers, paving the pathway, removing the obstacles that they might grow? Okay. So the victim spirit usually blames their persecutor for their problems. The victim spirit is always looking for a rescuer to sympathize with them. However, the victim never ever really wants to be rescued. They just want to gather sympathy. And have you seen sick people that want to stay sick? You know, how you doing? Oh, I'm glad you asked. You know, and after a while you realize, don't ever ask that person how they're doing. They don't want to be helped. Now, I'm not saying don't be sympathetic, but I'm saying if they're in this victim trap, you're just either going to end up a rescuer or a persecutor, but they're never going to get helped. Your sympathy is not going to help them. What you need to do if you really truly love them and you're truly sympathetic is to now speak to them about coming out of that into a whole different way of thinking, which is where now you become the overcomer, which is what we're going to talk about right now, how to do that. And over here, you become the encourager. So you still have the sympathy, and you still want to help them, but you want to encourage them into health. This was Tommy, who came alongside me and says, I want to encourage you to knock it off. Now she could speak my language. God sent the right person that she was actually married to a military commander, pilot, whatever he was. And so she was used to dealing with that temperament. So she just felt absolutely comfortable to come alongside me. And I mean, my wife was she's like, I can't believe my husband lets you talk to him like that, you know? And that was that surprise moment when God sent the right messenger to give me the message. And then this person becomes the protector. And then on the diagram in the next page, what I've tried to do is take this triangle and flatten it out so that instead of it being hierarchical, we lay it this way. And there's no one person above the other. The protector's not in charge. The protector, encourager, and overcomer all work as a unit. At any one moment, you may find yourself needing to protect or to encourage or to just plain overcome. Is this making sense? Yes. And what God is doing now everywhere, like if this was a triangle, my piece of paper would be a good example. So we got this triangle. In the old way, it was a pyramid. The senior guy or gal was on top, and then there was rank and file, and you had to start at the bottom, work your way up. And what God's doing now is He's saying there's still order in the church, but it's this way. There is a senior leader who might be on the point of bringing this thing into the next thing, but it's not necessarily because they're better. They're actually writing point, which means pray for them. Because that's more of a dangerous position as they're paving new revelation, paving new thinking. But at any one time, God could turn this thing and say, now I want the servants to lead because we're going to pour out our heart and compassion. Or I want the teachers to lead, or I want the pastors, or I want it to be a prophetic conference. And it's not about strategy. Does this make sense? So this is turned to this. It goes 3D on us. And that's what I was trying to draw by the flattened triangle on the back. So the protectors now aren't suddenly in charge, but they are necessary. In any one church, we have protectors. It was interesting. Sometimes we get crazy things happen in a church like this, but most of the time now, you don't know it's happening. We had a potluck 3 weeks ago, however long ago. Seems like 6 years to me, but that's what happens when you live in the now. We had this potluck, and this woman had come in who was kind of a crazy prophet that is definitely false and got a weird spirit, and everybody's tried to help her and love her, and finally started to tell her, look, if you're going to keep this up, you're not welcome here, and you can't tell me to go. And, oh yeah, you're going to discover there's a few protectors in the church and not just some huggers. And she met up with one who took her and escorted her out during the potluck. I mean, everybody at the potluck says, this is so much fun. And I talked to one person, they go, did you see that fight that happened? I go, no, you're kidding. Well, not really a fight. I just kind of overpowered and escorted her out the door. She threw a cup of coffee at me and this and this and that. All this is happening because in the church at any one time, there was encouragement, but there was protecting, and there was also this overcoming as people were overcoming shyness and getting to talk to each other. And I sat and talked to the ladies, and it was a breakthrough at this moment. And all these things happening simultaneously as it's flattened out. That's when life's happening. And you know there's one person orchestrating the entire thing, Jesus. He's up here going, this is like fun. This is like just a challenging chess game. Watching Horizon survive in Seattle. Actually overcome and move on. So now you can see that. Now I want to talk one last piece before we take a break, switch gears here. And that is this whole thing of EQ. It's a long and big subject, but I'm going to do a flyover, and I can recommend a couple things if you want to go further. Becoming aware of your emotions. Understanding the difference between EQ and IQ. IQ and EQ. For years, IQ, which is your intelligence quotient, was measured by psychologists, and they could discover how your brain worked and how smart you are. They'd give you a number like 148 or something like that. And the problem with it, in a sense, was it was a static number. You couldn't change it. If you were a certain IQ, then you could be higher society, or at least educated-wise. And then if you had a low IQ, you couldn't. And then they'd make movies up, like Forrest Gump, who had a 78 IQ. But then he's in a hero in all of these scenes all over the world, and it's like underdog movie. Yeah, go Forrest, Because we all hated IQ because we go, what if I'm the Forrest Gump and everybody around me is brilliant? So we love those kind of shows, right? I'm Forrest and I can still be valuable, So what a bunch of sociologists and psychologists began to discover was there was another factor called EQ, which is actually emotional intelligence, which shows that it's not that intelligent because Q isn't I. It should be EI, but it's emotional EQ. To link it with this and saying there's your IQ, but then there's also EQ, and it can change. You can increase your IQ. There's tests to show where you are. You can increase your EQ in 6 months just by doing a few basic things. And I can give you a name of a book that can help you take the test and if you want to work on that. What they also discovered, looking at your notes here, for decades it was possible to measure IQ, intelligence quotient, but about a decade ago a man developed ways to measure EQ, emotional intelligence. Definition of EQ. EQ is your ability to recognize and understand emotions in yourself and others, and your ability to use this awareness to manage your behavior and relationships. Manage is not so much manipulate, but another how to get along with people. Success in relationships, and especially the workplace, was more determined by EQ than IQ. This blew people's minds. Because it used to be if you had high IQ, you could end up getting a good job, maybe a CEO of a big company and make millions of dollars. Then they discovered the best CEOs were not the highest IQ, but the highest EQ. And it became the factor in the business world to determine potential success when you're hiring. The green, experiments. People with high IQ outperformed average IQ 20% of the time. People with average EQ outperformed high IQ 70% of the time. You catching that? Basically, that's saying EQ is far more powerful for performance, the ways they measured performance. Okay. Further, it was discovered that IQ is static and unchangeable. However, you can raise your EQ using certain techniques in less than 6 months. You choose one of the 4 EQ skills to work on at a time. Now, this is directly from a book called EQ 2.0. That's the name of the book. It's a secular book. But if you buy the little book, it's 20-some bucks, but in the back is a little thing you open up, and it's a code, and you get online and you take the test. And you can measure yourself against the standards that they're using for this. So there is a way to measure emotional health. Okay? That's the one I recommend that I'm using that's common out there now. But basically, you'll find the entire book, because it explains all this, summarized with these little boxes here. Personal competence and social competence. Now, it's interesting, as I see the Bible unfolding over and over, I'm seeing how personal growth and community growth are really the two issues. Personal growth is childhood. You grow up. Once you become a man, then you start working with the rest of society and you become valuable or dangerous to society, depending on your personal growth or lack of it. That's what's going on in the Bible. We're right now at the place of saying, church is not about you guys, church is about us. So if you need a church that's about you for personal growth, you need to go to one of those kindergarten churches, which is working on personal growth only. Here we're working on community growth. We want you to grow so you can figure out how to get along with the rest of us, because we all have a job to do. Is this making sense? So EQ now goes into this stage of social competence. And what we have found, the blue and the green, now if you look vertically, there's self-awareness and social awareness. So one of the first strengths in emotional health is self-awareness, aware of what you're doing. So you come into a group and you realize, I'm here. Then there's this social awareness where you realize, but I'm not the only one here. There's somebody else here. Have you ever been into a room where one person in the room thinks they're the only guy in the room? Yes. And they're not aware of anything else? They keep talking, somebody important enters the room and they just keep talking and everybody turns to see this other person and they're upset. Hey, I was talking. Oh, you're not socially aware. You need to stop talking and you need to welcome in the person that's coming into now. This scene has changed. It's not about you. Social awareness. Right? And when you're around someone that's awkward with social awareness, it's so funny. Like, we have certain skills. We go out in the foyer, we're going to drink coffee in a minute or something. And if two of us are talking and a third person walks up, we automatically create a triangle, which says we include you, with a fourth person. And the dialogue might shift to be socially aware. And if you're mature, you actually say, hey, come over here. Don't stand there. Come over here. How you doing? Come talk with us. Or let's go over and talk to this guy. Socially aware. Okay? Next column over is self-management and relationship management. This is when you get into parenting and you have two kids fighting over a toy, you learn relationship management. Okay, you get this toy first and then in 10 minutes you're going to trade, or whatever your management skill was to help them walk through that, right? So when you want to move towards leadership, you actually have to learn how to help people get along with each other. It's not just you having a son, it's you having 6 sons and the 6 sons like each other. Or that would be an example. Okay? Then there's in this book, it tells you actually in each section things you can do to help you with great examples. The book is it's another one of those keep on your shelf keeper type books. By the way, I think that's one of those you can buy on Kindle if you're an iPad or a tablet person who likes to read, like when you're sitting at a Starbucks or on an airplane or something. Now, the emotional grid: happy, sad, angry, afraid, shame. Those are the 5 emotions. I was surprised there's only 5. But there's so many variations on that, depending on low intensity or high intensity. Happiness, low intensity, is chilling out, pleasant mood. Oh, this is nice. High intensity is, I'm fired up. I want to dance, man. Let's jump. So it's all happiness, but there's various intensities of that happiness. Sadness, you're moody or disappointed. The full intensity would be, I'm depressed and miserable and trying to make everybody around me the same. Angry. Angry is you're a little annoyed or you're touchy. All the way towards outraged and feeling betrayed. It's the same emotion at various intensities. And if we begin to learn your emotions, my wife and I are pretty good at helping each other. I go, honey, I think you might be hungry. Why do you think that? I'm not hungry. Yeah, honey, you're hungry. Why? Because you get a little touchy when you're hungry. Oh, really? Okay, let's go eat. Right? It's not a fight. It's just helping each other. And then pretty soon she becomes aware and she goes, I think I need something to eat. Yeah, there's an idea. Now I'm picking on her. She's not here today, but she has the same with me. She goes, I think you need a day off. Why do you say so? Just hug me and kiss me and it'll all be fine. No, thank you. You know, it's like she could tell you're wound up. You're a little angry. You just need to chill for a day. I know what you need. Now, it's not the same for everybody, but food or rest is not the answer. But there is some things you need to know about yourself. When your emotional tank is getting towards the E, what do? When your gas gauge on your car gets to E, you find the gas station. What do you do when your emotions get to E? Do you keep pushing through? No, you're going to coast to a stop and hurt people around you. That's the problem, because it's social and not just personal. So you have to learn what it is that fills you back up. And it's not the same for everybody. And on that personal growth book, I got a lot of examples of things you can do to help you. But you know yourself. That's self-awareness. What do I need? What fills me up? Maybe it's social. Maybe for others, it's not being social. I just need to be alone. I need to sit down and do something by myself. Okay, anger, afraid, you're cautious, all the way to terrified and panicky. Shame, you're a little bashful, all the way to feeling extremely dishonored. Okay? So you need to learn to spot trigger events. Practice productive ways of recording these. Will eventually practice the ways of responding. These will eventually become habits. Your EQ score then begins to raise. So that is the solution for the next one here, which is the victim spirit. So what is the solution? Wisdom. You need to know stuff. In wisdom, possess your soul. So books like that, EQ, become very helpful for Christians, even though it's a secular book, because it's dealing with just the one segment of your humanity, which is your soul and your emotions. Okay?